I am independent, true journalism lover, genuine NATO, CIA terror, Ukraine fascism, Zionism and corrupt MSM hater. I am not paid for posting my own opinions. Hello everyone. I thought I would make a video today about Twitter bots because I realized that there are a lot of self-identified noticers and pattern recognizers out there who are in fact not very good at noticing or recognizing patterns when it comes to malicious activity on social media, especially on the platform X or formerly Twitter. So, firstly, to clarify, when I'm talking about bots or trolls on Twitter, I mean automated accounts that engage in practices like amplification or fake reviews, market manipulation, amplification, engagement farming, shilling, propaganda, etc. So, I know there are automated accounts on Twitter that are utility bots, like bots that do translation or bots that do screen capture, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about automated or partially automated accounts that present themselves as real organic users and try to pass off their activity as organic. They can come in different forms. Some of them are fully automated and scripted. Others are partially automated and overseen. And some of them are just run by humans from troll factories where they follow specific scripts in terms of the type of behavior that they are supposed to engage in. Say like they have a quota of posting 30 posts per day, maybe 10 replies, images that they need to post a certain amount of times that are usually related to certain goals, whether it would be in the public or private sector. So I'm going to be using some examples from the Norwegian sphere because that's what I am familiar with. And it's a lot easier for me to identify inauthentic Norwegian accounts than it would be to identify somebody else. Like if I was going to try to bust, for example, fake Croatian accounts or something, then that would be difficult because of the language. If I was going to bust fake, let's say, Vietnamese accounts, that would be difficult because of language and the time zone. So this one is just a lot easier for me to immediately spot things that come across as suspect. So secondly, you have to remember that there's a difference between proof and evidence. I don't have the access to the Twitter backend or their databases, and I can't see the registrations and payments and emails and so on. So I can only show you evidence of what I believe is suspicious Twitter activity, and then you can make up your own mind. But I will not be able to conclusively prove that an account is sort of inorganic. So, what are we looking for when it comes to Twitter bots, and how do we spot them? I've split this into three separate categories of things that are important to look for. The first would be information integrity. That if a bot is claiming to be a certain nationality, if they're claiming to live a certain place or have a certain identity, you can try to find inconsistencies in what they're writing and what the information they're presenting about themselves and use that to sort of bust them. The second would be the numbers. That you look at, Social Blade, you can look at following numbers, post frequency, post volume, engagement numbers, and see if there's like inauthentic, fishy engagement that would have been connected to automation on their end, would be connected to being a part of a bot network, for example. So, and the third one would be behavioral patterns. That you look for behaviors that would be very alien and strange for a human being that interacts with Twitter through their phone or on the computer screen through the user interface. So it's we'll say things like very quick, high-frequency posting that is sort of bound to a rule set and that is very rigid and so on. So let me show you some examples. Okay, so the first account we are going to look at here is Mats Hansen. Mats Hansen is allegedly a MAGA Norwegian super pro-Trump reply guy that shows up on many famous Norwegian accounts to argue with people in favor of Trump. And he does the Trump apologetics routine, and sometimes he's just asking questions. So if you look in the reply tab, you can see how many accounts that he's arguing with, right? And these are not fake accounts. Some of them are, verified users or, celebrities or at least large figures either in alt media, or sometimes it's, like mainstream journalists or other Norwegian influencers in various spaces. So at first glance, his comments seem normal. The Norwegian grammar and syntax is okay, and his answers are coherent enough to pass the Turing test, which I think is the reason most accounts don't see anything suspicious with him, and they choose to interact with him in good faith. But let's take a break and look at what's suspicious about this account, because I have a list of things. Let's look at the small things first. Okay, we'll zoom in a little bit. Here you see his handle is called Hansen 61028, which is a bit suspicious. Typically, when you have standard organic accounts, they will not have longer strings of numbers at the end of their handle. Maybe 2 digits for their birthday, or some kind of stylized name where you replace alphabetic letters with numbers or something like that, but not like this. And of course, the longer these number strings are and the more incomprehensible they seem, I think the more likely it is that this is a bot. So this is, I think, at least a 5-digit number is in really suspect range, that this is something that exists for a computer to identify and not for a human being to remember. So like the point of the handles is that you can just remember them in your head and just type them into the URL and get there. But when you have these long numbers, it's like a human being, it's difficult to remember them, but for a computer, it's the ideal thing. So he has joined about a year ago, which I think would be preferable. This doesn't prove anyone is a bot, but I think if you were to generate bots, it's easier to create new ones rather than maintain old bots that are being monitored by the Twitter algorithm to suppress them. It's also easier to create newer bots after Elon took over, because the authentication process for things like blue check marks have gotten simpler. So at next glance here, we could look at his name, Mats Hansen. He has no profile picture, which in itself is a bit, it should be one warning sign. It's not conclusive again. Who is Mats Hansen? Mats Hansen is a Norwegian sort of D-list celebrity as a former football player. And this is clearly not the same guy that's been verified, but it's a sort of an indication he's using the name of a celebrity. Otherwise, it's not a completely unusual name either, so I would accept the fact that there are multiple people with this name. But there's nothing to go off here on the Google results to identify this guy. You find his Twitter account here, but otherwise it's just links to the celebrity who has nothing to do with him. So that's a bit of a dead end. Let's look again. If we look at his his numbers, he has almost 6,000 posts after being active for about a year. That's a relatively high level of activity. Like, I have been active for over 2 years on Twitter now, and I have about 7,000 posts, split evenly between replies and standalone posts. When with this guy, like, most of his activities is replies. He, like you see on the post line here, it's mostly just reposts. Relatively few quote tweets, relatively few original posts. It's mostly just being in the replies, arguing with other people. So this is also something that, I know that there are reply guys who have this pattern of browsing, right? So this is also not conclusive. But if you were to look at a bot, you were to have to think in terms of a certain algorithm that they're following that's not too complex. That they're either aiming for posting certain things to create engagement that is a little bit more thought out if you have a human being who's monitoring it. If it's automated, you ought to think more in terms of replies and just getting as much reply volume as possible and retweeting people. Say, for instance, following many people, like you see with the porn bots, where they follow thousands of people hoping to get followers back and create engagement that way. But that's not the strategy we're seeing here. We're just seeing that, okay, it's a reply guy account, which is not in itself incriminating, but it's a sort of hint to where this is going. One thing that you have to look for in bots is the concept of single purpose. That this account exists only for one reason, And if you have an organic human account, it's a lot more normal that they would talk about different things. Let's say like, okay, this maybe he's a football fan, maybe he likes to eat tacos and drink beers at the pub, and maybe he has family and likes to go for walks with his dog. So they will talk about things like that. They might talk about things that are happening in local politics on television, things like that will seep in, even though they have a main interest in politics. But with this account, it is like 99.9% of the posts are arguing with Norwegians about Trump. That seems to be kind of the sole purpose, and there's some more things around that. Like some posts that are generally just disparaging of Norwegian politicians of particular stripes, but most of it is just completely focused on it. It's high volume towards a single purpose. If you want to underline this point even further, you could look at the media tab here, because usually on the media tab, this is where you can see every GIF and every image that they posted. And people will mix things up. They will use different images and different GIFs for expressions. They might have some favorite GIFs they go back to. But with this guy, this is like, look at how repetitive it is. Here he has the image of the election, the Polymarket election forecast, and he's just reposting it over and over and over again. And he goes back here. He has like this pamphlet-like picture of Marx that he posts. And so yeah, you see that there's a lot of repetition here. Yeah, you can really see how weird this is. This is not normal. This is not organic human behavior at all. So if you want just a quick cursory glance of if somebody's a bot, just look for just look at the media tab, and you can very quickly see that they're pushing some specific narrative where they're just going into the replies and posting the same photo over and over and over again. Very machine-like. So we could look at some of the more advanced things. If you are a bit more technical, then instead of just looking cursory at the account, we could look at the account history. So I have an Excel spreadsheet here where I have like a full documentation of his history, and you could look at that. To get this, I've basically used the Chrome extension TW extract to scrape the Twitter account. If you want the premium version, you're gonna have to pay a little bit for it. So I'm not trying to advertise that, I'm just explaining how I got it. Otherwise, you will have to create a scraping script yourself. That will have to stand and run on your PC, considering how Twitter works. You cannot just get this instantly. It will have to just go for hours if you're dealing with accounts with several thousand posts to get this down. This was actually a lot easier before Elon came aboard, but he made changes to the API that made it more expensive and more costly to get this stuff out. So here I have like his full tweet history, and at least then I can confirm that yes, he does in fact almost just solely talk about the same thing over and over again. There are things you could look at here, like the you have the timestamps when they're created. So you could look at if they're posting at suspect hours, for example. If he claims to be Norwegian, then I look at the Norwegian timestamps, and if he's posting during night hours all the time, then that's a little bit suspect, right? Or you could establish some kind of pattern, like if he's only posting between 7 and 3, then he's doing it as a job. The problem is that most likely I think this is a Russian bot, and Moscow and St. Petersburg are in the time zone that is GMT +3. Norway is in the time zone that is GMT +2, so there's only 1 hour differential. So it's a little bit hard to glean from this that there's a clear time conflict difference. This is easier to spot with, say, Russian bots that are claiming to be from Texas, for example, and there's like a very large, maybe like an 8-hour time difference between when they're posting and when they're as opposed to where they claim to be from. So there's nothing immediately that I could glean from this that seems totally suspect, other than the volume and some of the frequencies that you see here. Because like you could look at these posts, it's like a second between each of them. It's just barely 1 second passing between each post, and this is okay. Yeah, it's a little bit more on these ones, but like I have some scripts where I just sort of parse through, and I use the script to sort of calculate the minimum amount of time he's using between certain posts, and it's about 4 seconds. this is highly suspicious, unless you're like just replying to yourself or making addendums to your post. If you're using Twitter as a normal human being, and just evaluating posts, going through, observing things, thinking about things, you're not going to spend like 4 seconds between each. That seems highly suspicious. We can also look at here as like the ratio between, say, replies and original posts. So he has like about 9 original posts and 2,261 replies from the date that I scraped this, which is, I know reply guys, but this is like really terminally reply guy behavior. So his max activity is that he posted 162 tweets in one day, and he has like an average like ratio of like 0.8, so it's relatively little engagement. He posts about 32 tweets per day on average. So those are some things that I think are suspicious. It's really the high frequency between his posts and the low engagement of the tweets that I found suspicious. So I have sort of a checklist here to see if I got everything. Young account, repeating media, so he checks a lot of boxes as to what you would expect from a bot. But again, none of this is conclusive, but I found a little surprise in between the comments that I think should seal the deal if you're not convinced that this is a bot from a foreign country. Because this guy mostly tweets in Norwegian, right? Almost all of the tweets are in Norwegian, but he has one tweet from the 1st of November here, where he's responding to Garry Kasparov, the Russian chess player, where Kasparov is like responding snarkily to Elon Musk. He says, "They are in power now, and you seem to be doing all right. So much projection." And then he replies, "Garry Kasparov is a traitor." Yeah, this is a totally normal thing to say if you're just a Norwegian MAGA commentator. So yeah, I think he slipped his mask a little bit there and kind of forgot that he was supposed to play a role. So yeah, I think we'll move on to the next account. Okay, the next account that we're going to look at here is Eva Sofia. So this account is immediately doing a lot better than Mats. If we look at the handle here, it's completely human readable. There's no intelligible strings of numbers here. This is a regular name for a Norwegian female. There's a Norwegian flag here and a picture of a blonde woman facepalming. So it's a picture that's something that looks like a fjord. I tried to reverse Google image search it. I didn't find anything. So, but again, there's no reason to sort of think that this is AI generated or anything. I can't detect that from looking at the image. There is a quote in the bio from Pascal, which is a little bit weird. Like there's certain language here that it's not typically used in the regular Norwegian, the way that it's spoken and the way that it's flows. But you could forgive that because this is a quote from 1670. So, okay, that's not too bad. She alleges to be from Bergen, Norway. There's no references to this in any of the tweets. So, I went through, I tried to just search and replace through her tweet history. I found no references to Bergen or anything that's going on there. And she joined, so it's about a 2-year-old account. We could look at some of the standard markers, like say comparing the following and the followers. It's relatively low compared to the amount of posts. So it's almost 10,000 posts with barely, straight under 300 followers. And this account does not make the same mistakes as Mats does. If you look at the media tab, for example, this seems a lot more organic. She's even throwing in, films like this sort of cutesy October themoid compilation there. But yeah, there's not hiding that this is Russian, by the way. So maybe that's a bit of a slip right there if you're Norwegian, why you're only posting the Russian October Halloween videos, but again, it does not fall into this low quality pattern of just repeating the same image like 20 times after each other. And this account is also, it's a majority reply and argue account, but she also does a lot of posting on her own, like quote tweeting and posts like this that will contain multiple images. And here she's writing about Ukraine, and this is a single-purpose Ukraine account. Relatively few mentions of MAGA, Palestine, pro-Palestine stuff sometimes, but most of the content is anti-Ukraine.
Ukraine is gone. It's not Ukraine anymore. They just don't know what to do. They're locked into a situation.
Get up here! Get up here! Let's dance! Let's dance!
Yeah, that's interesting. I have no... the claim here, I guess, is that the Ukrainians are just using their aid money to spend on expensive cars and jackets. So the post here, I'm going to translate it. Ukraine, September, October 2024. Ukraine serves the world fake images and films to trick the world. They reward criminal aid and asylum fraud. People have understood that Azov dresses up as Russian soldiers, ? Azov warriors blew up the theater in Mariupol. So here's the first problem, is that being Norwegian, this like sentence structure is completely incoherent. Nobody talks like this, and the grammar or the spelling is completely correct. The grammar is seemingly correct, like in usage of signs and apostrophes, ? So there's nothing wrong here. It's just in the phrasing that is just alien. It's I think translating directly in Google Translate would sound less weird than this, and you don't just take my word for it. I asked ChatGPT to study this tweet, right? And I ask, does this tweet seem like it was written by a native Norwegian speaker? And ChatGPT responds, this tweet has several indicators that it may not have been written by a native Norwegian speaker. Here are some aspects that seem off. And he said, point number 1, punctuation. The use of punctuation is unusual. In Norwegian, spaces are generally not added before or after dashes. So falske bilder og filmsnutter should more naturally be written as falske bilder og filmsnutter. Like it's the dash that's sort of it's a little bit unusual to be using. GPT is much better than me grammatically on this, so I'm glad to have that assistance. Number 2, word choice. Certain phrases like kriminell bistand og asylsvindel feel slightly forced. A native speaker would likely phrase it differently, possibly using kriminell bistand og asylsvindel as one combined concept rather than separating them with punctuation. Point 3, structure and flow. The sentence structure feels somewhat stilted. A native speaker might use a more fluid sentence structure and emphasis here on certain points. Ukraina serverer verden feels awkward, as it would be phrased less rigidly in Norwegian. Yeah, that's what I picked up on as well. It's like this, it's this rigidity that seems like it belongs in the 1800s that nobody's using in written or oral language. Point number 4, context and tone. While the message is intelligible, the phrasing doesn't fully capture a natural Norwegian conversational or written tone, particularly in its use of certain vocabulary and expressions. In summary, while understandable, this tweet does not read like a natural native level Norwegian and may have been written by someone with Norwegian as their second language. I think it's basically just some kind of translator or some trained GPC that they're using at the troll factory here. So, but yeah, there's a lot of these posts, stuff like this as well, where it's kind of just spamming tags and spamming at replies. Or just throwing in as many images as you can, a lot of this. So this is also a sign of bots that are sort of just farming for engagement. I have the spreadsheet here as well. So on my bot checklist, high frequency with minimum followers, lacking personal information, single purpose behavior. We have, let's see, URL heavy, hashtag stuffed tweets, strange irregular grammar, Details don't really seem to match, and the language doesn't match. So it's, I mean, it's not many points, but it's just the points that are there stand out very badly, especially the kind of single focus on the anti-Ukraine and the completely stilted, strange Norwegian. There's also metadata that you could get from parsing the full Twitter log here, that it's the same thing as the previous account, that there's like, 1 second breaks sometimes between posting on the timeline. This is quite unusual. And there's also some unusual characters. This is also a thing that I registered. This account is not the worst, but assuming you're using a Norwegian keyboard, there are specific characters like the E with the apostrophe, for example, that is not a button on the keyboard. It's like quite hard to get. So if you find that an account claims to be from a place and they're using characters that are not on that native keyboard layout, you should be suspicious. This is Kashuta Akula. Here is her profile picture. I was not able to reverse Google search this. She even has a background photo. I was not able to reverse search this either, so they just lead back to the profile. So her handle has 3 digits at the end. It is slightly weird, but not too suspicious. The profile description here, there's an Orthodox cross, and she says, "I am independent, true journalism lover, genuine NATO, CIA terror, Ukraine fascism, Zionism and corrupt MSM hater. I am not paid for posting my own opinions. I am independent, true journalism really just lover, posts about the genuine standard NATO, CIA kind of, terror, ortho Ukraine Russia fascism, stack.
Zionism and corrupt
Russia's
MSM
awesome,
hater.
Zionism
I am not
sucks.
paid for posting my own opinions.
The MSM, the West sucks and are degenerate." So yeah, you've seen it before. There's nothing immediately suspicious about the follower count or the following count. But if you look at the posting, this is like 18,000 plus posts in less than a year, considering she joined on January the 2024. Like, this is insane levels of posting. The previous account had existed for about a year and had about 5,000. I have 7,000 posts after 2 years. So this is almost 20,000 in less than 1 year. Really like machine gun levels here. So this is the first warning sign here that something is a little bit off with this account. Let's look in the media tab. So there's certain repetitions of photos here. Here we have the baboon ass, the NAFO slob, the merchants. So yeah, the Ukraine diaper squad. It is like this kind of standard Russian trolling stuff. The reason she's included here is that she speaks Norwegian apparently, and she replies to a lot of Norwegian threads, even stuff that I've posted when I do threads about Russia and stuff. She has appeared and started talking shit. So that's why I found it interesting. I thought this was a real person at first, some kind of frustrated mail-order bride that lives in Norway and has learned the language, but apparently I think this is just an automated account. The location even says Land of Trolls, but this I've seen on other accounts as well. Like it's this joking thing. It almost draws attention away from the fact that this is what's actually happening. So I mean, it's not easy to infer from just looking at the accounts or the posts, because they're relatively well made and it seems organic enough if you just look at their response. Like, this is just an account with a grudge against the West, but it is actually a real person. What you will notice is that the insanely high posting pattern is something that jumps out at you. Just the frequency. I copy-pasted about 1,000 dates here in sequence, and I asked ChatGPT to give me an analysis so I could read that for you. So here it is. It's almost a little bit too long, but ChatGPT has analyzed it and says, based on the high level, look at this timestamp data, we can observe some posting patterns. Here is an initial analysis. Number 1, burst posting patterns. There are several bursts where posts occur within seconds or minutes of each other, particularly noticeable on November the 2nd. Let's say like 1840 to 1854, and November the 1st. around 23:30 p.m. and 12:50 p.m. That seems a little bit weird. It seems like he's mixing the times here. So, but yeah, he did give me some intervals. This indicates likely rapid posting sessions, posting using automation or timed tweets. See, regular posting intervals. This account posts frequently at specific times a day, often aligning with intervals such as late evening, say at like between 10 to 11, mid-morning, 12, 13. This suggests either a strategy that targets audience peaks or a scheduling tool to distribute posts across popular engagement windows. Extended posting activity throughout the day. Posts occur consistently throughout a range of time blocks, including early morning, midday, late evening. This implies the account aims to maximize visibility across different daily activity peaks, which could appeal to followers in multiple time zones. High frequency days, certain days, especially October the 30th and the 31st, feature high numbers of posts, possibly indicating the account has specific peak activity days, perhaps in response to specific events and topics. The patterns could imply that on some days the account is part of a broader conversation trend, leading to increasing posting frequency. Number 5, nighttime posting. There are some time types in the late night and very early morning, such as 11 p.m., which could indicate that the account is also aiming to capture audiences who are active later, possibly at different geographic regions. And that's something to think about as well if they're using these posting patterns, is that they have specific demographics that they're trying to target, and they know when they're awake or when they're the most active, so they're just rapid firing posts in those windows. This is very sophisticated stuff. Summary of observed patterns: burst activity in short intervals, consistent posting across peak hours, high posting frequency on certain days. Yeah, so it's really the post analysis that kind of gives this account away as a bot account. Okay, but I think that's it. I have like a list of 30 potential bots that I could go through, but I thought I would just do these 3. And the question then becomes like, how exactly do you deal with this? And I guess the only tips that I could give, aside from the things that I've mentioned that you could look at for profiles, is that to try to disengage from the immediate politics team sport brain. When you're in a thread and you're being replied to by by an account without a profile picture that looks suspect, instead of going into this argumentative mode where you're just posting timestamps, you should just ask them an open-ended question, for example, like they do in Blade Runner with the void camp test. Like, if you find a desert on its back if you find a turtle on its back laying in the desert, what do you do, for example, or just ask them some open question like that, or ask them for the food recipe or something and see if they respond. And based on that, if you're wasting your time, because there's no point in sitting and actually arguing with these bots. Just, ask them an open-ended question. If you get no response, just block them. That's my tips, so I'll leave you with that.